In May 1937, William Randolph Hearst boarded a train for New York with the knowledge that the bankers waiting at the other end could take away the empire he had spent half a century building. The numbers were brutal. His companies owed millions to paper suppliers. Banks were demanding payment. Stock dividends had fallen behind. Construction at San Simeon had stopped. The newspapers that once frightened presidents could no longer protect their owner from arithmetic. Hearst was 74 years old. He had controlled editors, politicians, studios, and armies of employees. Now he sat in a private railway car and admitted to Marion Davies, the woman who had shared his life for 2 decades, that he believed he was finished. "I guess I'm through," he told her. Marion had heard him make grand declarations before. She had watched him order buildings changed after walls were already standing. She had seen him spend fortunes on paintings, statues, newspapers, movie sets, ranches, and parties. This time, his voice carried no performance. The chief, as everyone called him, had reached the point where another order could not produce another dollar. Marion stepped out of his compartment, found one of his advisors, and said she had called her lawyers, so she could lend Hearst $1 million. He refused. Hearst had made her famous and financed her films, while his newspapers kept her face before the public. He had also built a life around her, while remaining married to another woman. Taking money from Marion would reverse the arrangement that had defined them. He would become the dependent one. By the time the train reached New York, pride had become a luxury. Hearst accepted her money. Then he surrendered control of his business to a trustee. That scene contains the part of this story that popular memory usually loses. Marion Davies has often been cast as the expensive mistress who helped drain Hearst's fortune. She was certainly tied to his spending. Their homes required staffs, cars, private rail travel, film productions, parties, and constant construction. Hearst used corporate influence to push her career, sometimes against her own instincts. His obsession with turning her into the kind of star he wanted became costly in money and reputation. Yet when the empire reached its crisis, Marion wrote the check. She had been treated as evidence of his recklessness. She became one of the people keeping him alive. Hearst's collapse had many causes. Expansion continued when restraint would have protected him. Losing newspapers stayed in the chain because he could not bear to surrender territory. Art kept arriving, while creditors waited. Money flowed into films, and his attacks on Franklin Roosevelt and the New Deal alienated readers. Debt remained, in his mind, a temporary inconvenience. The Depression stripped value from properties that had supported his borrowing. His empire had been built with family wealth, aggressive credit, and an appetite that rarely heard the word enough. Marion stood close enough to be blamed for all of it. Their affair also carried a public cost that could not be measured on a balance sheet. Hearst sold himself as a defender of morality while living openly with a woman who was not his wife. His newspapers could hide certain details, soften others, and punish enemies who spoke too freely. Hollywood still knew. New York knew. His sons knew. His wife knew. The contradiction weakened the authority he demanded from everyone around him. A publisher who exposed other people's secrets had built his private life on one of the largest secrets in America, a secret visible to almost everyone. Marion paid a price as well. She became famous under conditions that made people distrust her success. Favorable reviews looked purchased, large budgets looked like gifts, and each publicity campaign made her talent harder to see. Hearst could put her name above a theater. He could not force an audience to forget who owned the newspapers praising her. Citizen Kane caused the longest damage. Generations of viewers mistook one fictional woman for Marion. Susan Alexander Kane was loud, dependent, and painfully untalented. Marion Davies had been a skilled comic performer, a producer, a sharp mimic, and one of the most popular actresses of the silent era. The association stuck because it fit a story people already wanted to believe. The rich publisher had bought a blonde girl a career. She had helped ruin him. His castle had become a monument to vanity. His empire had collapsed under the cost of keeping her. That version is clean. it is also incomplete. That version flourished because it gave the disaster a face. Debt agreements stayed in boardrooms. Marion appeared in photographs beside swimming pools, costume fittings, banquet tables, and movie stars. A reader could look at her and believe the missing millions had been found. Hearst encouraged that conclusion without intending it. He turned affection into publicity. His papers announced Marion's pictures with the same force they used for elections and wars. When audiences resisted one of his preferred roles for her, he increased the pressure. When studio executives disagreed, he treated the dispute as a challenge to his authority. The promotion became so loud that Marion's actual work disappeared behind it. The castle made the accusation visible. San Simeon contained imported ceilings, ancient sculpture, indoor and outdoor pools, guest houses, private animals, and rooms that changed whenever Hearst found another object he wanted. Marion presided over dinners there. Photographs placed her near the luxury. Few photographs showed bank loans, overdue newsprint bills, or the papers Hearst kept running for pride. The title of this story points toward an affair, though the evidence leads through a larger pattern. Hearst spent as though attention, art, politics, property, and love could all be secured by adding more. Marion entered that pattern and became its most famous symbol. She also learned how little protection a symbol receives once the money runs out. The train ride in 1937 joined every part of their relationship in a single compartment. Hearst had built her public image. She had built a private fortune. His companies were failing. Her check could keep them moving. The scandal that seemed to explain his ruin had produced the person able to delay it. Years before the castle and the film company, Marion had no idea how expensive a powerful man's attention could become. She was born Marion Cecilia Duras in Brooklyn in 1897. Her family had little connection to the world she later entered. Her father worked in law and local politics, though money and stability were uneven at home. Marion grew up with a severe stutter that made school difficult. Other children mocked her. Teachers could be cruel. Speech exposed her, while movement gave her control. Dance offered an exit. As a teenager, she left school and joined the stage. She appeared in musical productions, modeled for illustrators, and entered the chorus line. She was young, funny, observant, and good at imitation. People who knew her later remembered how quickly she could copy a voice, a posture, or a social mannerism. Her stutter did not vanish, though it eased when she performed in certain ways. Silent pictures would give her a place where her face and timing mattered more than fluent speech. William Randolph Hearst first noticed her while she was still a teenager. Accounts differ on the exact moment when admiration became an affair, though the pattern was already familiar. Hearst liked actresses and chorus girls. He had met his wife, Millicent Wilson, when she was a young performer. They married in 1903 and had 5 sons. By the time Marion entered his life, Hearst was more than 30 years older than she was, and already one of the best-known publishers in the country. He began with flowers, small gifts, and attention. Marion later remembered that she was aware he gave presents to other girls too. Hearst's courtship carried the confidence of a man who had spent years turning desire into acquisition. He saw something in her on stage, and then decided the screen should see it too. Her first feature, Runaway Romany, appeared in 1917. Marion helped write it, and her brother-in-law directed it. Hearst soon gave her a production company and a generous contract. He surrounded her with skilled crews, elaborate sets, and relentless publicity. He wanted a star whose success would belong partly to him. Marion wanted success. She also wanted to play. Those ambitions could have worked together. Her natural strength was comedy. She was fast, loose, and willing to look foolish. She could parody glamour while still possessing it. Hearst often preferred historical romance, expensive costumes, courtly heroines, and productions large enough to advertise his devotion. The disagreement shaped her career. Marion performed in the pictures he financed, while the best evidence of her gift appeared when directors allowed her humor room to breathe. Hearst's control reached into scripts, casting, costumes, hairstyles, and studio decisions. He attended filming and sent instructions. His protection opened doors, then crowded the room behind her. Directors and executives could never deal with Marion alone. A refusal might bring the anger of a newspaper chain. A casting decision could become a business dispute. This was love expressed as management. It created successes. In 1922, when Knighthood was in flower, arrived with a budget reported at $1.5 million, an enormous amount for the period. The production used huge sets and thousands of extras. Adolph Zukor worried about the cost. Hearst believed quality could not be made cheaply. The publicity covered billboards and electric signs. Audiences came, and the picture became a major hit. Marion followed it with Little Old New York, another popular costume film. By the early 1920s, she ranked among the leading female box office stars. Her fame had a financial basis beyond Hearst's advertising. People bought tickets. Success failed to end the whispering. Hearst's papers praised her so heavily that honest praise became difficult to separate from command. His publicity machine enlarged Marion and reduced her at the same time. It made her impossible to ignore and easy to dismiss. Their private arrangement also became harder to conceal. Millicent remained Hearst's wife. She had social standing, 5 sons, and her own public role. Marion occupied the other household, first in New York apartments and later in California. Hearst moved between marriage and affair without resolving either. Millicent noticed the scale of Marion's publicity. In 1921, she objected to advertising that promoted the actress more than the film. The complaint revealed how Hearst's business had become a channel for his personal attachment. A movie advertisement could cross the line into a message from husband to mistress, printed through a company his wife could also see. By the middle of the decade, the marriage had largely separated into 2 lives. Millicent stayed mainly in the East. Hearst and Marion made California their center. On a hill above the Pacific, another expression of Hearst's appetite was rising. He had inherited a vast family ranch near San Simeon. In 1919, after the death of his mother, he asked architect Julia Morgan to design a more comfortable place on the hill where his family had once camped. The request grew for nearly 3 decades. Roads, gardens, guest houses, pools, towers, terraces, and rooms filled with European art appeared above the coast. Hearst changed plans constantly. Morgan found ways to turn those changes into stone, concrete, wood, and steel. San Simeon became the setting most closely linked with Hearst and Marion. It had begun as his project and became their shared home. Marion acted as hostess while Hearst controlled the schedule. Guests included actors, writers, politicians, business leaders, and foreign visitors. They rode horses, played tennis, watched films, toured the zoo, and gathered for formal dinners under ceilings imported from Europe. The atmosphere mixed strict rules with theatrical abundance. Hearst disliked drunken scenes and expected guests to appear for meals. Marion had a freer spirit. She played games, performed impressions, encouraged jokes, and made people comfortable. Many visitors who found Hearst remote remembered Marion with affection. The castle later became evidence in the case against her. People saw the pools, art, animals, and endless building, then attached the entire expense to the affair. Marion benefited from the place and helped fill it with life. Hearst's compulsion to build came from older sources. Collecting had consumed him since youth, and heavy spending began long before he met her. Completion felt like a kind of death, because a finished project could no longer be revised. Marion became the human face of spending that belonged mainly to him. The same pattern followed her film career. In 1928, she made The Patsy and Show People, 2 comedies that revealed the performer Hearst had often buried beneath velvet gowns and historical scenery. The Patsy gave her room for mimicry and physical humor. Show People let her mock Hollywood ambition, studio vanity, and the machinery of stardom. She even made fun of the image built around her. These films gave later critics the clearest answer to anyone who called her talentless. Marion had comic rhythm. She understood the camera. She could let beauty become part of the joke instead of treating it as a sacred object. Hearst still wanted prestige. Prestige meant large dramas, famous stories, and roles that could be announced as events. His newspapers could launch campaigns, yet studio chiefs retained their own interests. At MGM, Marion lost roles Hearst wanted for her, including parts that went to Norma Shearer, the wife of production chief Irving Thalberg. Hearst responded by withdrawing support and moving Marion's company. His effort to control her career damaged the thing he was trying to protect. Marion could survive a weak picture. Her reputation struggled under the weight of his interference. Sound films created another challenge. The stutter she had managed since childhood made the change frightening, though she completed a number of talking pictures. She worked with performers including Clark Gable, Gary Cooper, Bing Crosby, and Leslie Howard. Her career continued into the middle of the 1930s, then slowed. Audiences changed. Studios changed. Hearst's demands remained. By 1937, she left the screen. Her retirement is often treated as proof that the affair destroyed her career. Hearst's control had limited her choices, and his publicity had distorted the way people judged her. Alcohol also became a serious part of her life. Personal losses, aging, professional frustration, and the uncertainty of her position with Hearst accumulated. Wealth and access never gave her a recognized place in his family. Marion could host senators at dinner while remaining absent from the legal structure of the household. Around the midpoint of their life together, the bargain had become clear. Hearst gave Marion opportunity on a scale few actors had ever received. He also placed his name between her and every achievement. Marion gave him companionship, warmth, humor, and a home separate from the formal world of his marriage. She still waited for a future he repeatedly postponed. If this account is giving you a different view of Marion, subscribe and tell us in the comments whether Hearst helped her career more than he harmed it. The costs of Hearst's choices were spreading far beyond Hollywood. During the 1920s, his media holdings expanded across newspapers, magazines, radio, newsreels, and film. He understood that the same story could travel through several forms. A headline could become a magazine feature, a broadcast, and a motion picture. That reach gave him influence few private citizens had possessed. It also required money. Some newspapers earned profits. Others survived because Hearst wanted a presence in a city or could not tolerate a rival claiming victory. He had access to income from family properties and investments, and lenders accepted the value of his name and assets. Expansion continued through borrowing, so did the collecting. Hearst bought paintings, furniture, ceilings, sculpture, silver, manuscripts, tapestries, and architectural fragments. Warehouses filled faster than his homes. Agents learned that the chief wants it, could end a discussion about price. Objects arrived for buildings that were unfinished or had no clear place for them. The film business added another stream of expense. Marion's productions were part of it, though Hearst's ambitions reached beyond one actress. His earlier moves into newsreels and serialized entertainment belonged to a larger ambition, a media system able to rival the major studios. Hearst paid for scale and expected influence to produce returns. Then the economic ground shifted. The stock market crash and the Depression reduced advertising, circulation, property values, and available credit. Businesses that carried too much debt faced decisions they had delayed during the good years. Hearst answered pressure with resistance. He did not want to sell newspapers. He kept buying art longer than his advisors considered safe. Political campaigns in his papers placed him against Roosevelt, the New Deal, organized labor, and parts of the audience that had once supported him. His publications had always reflected his own convictions. During the 1930s, those convictions became a commercial burden in several markets. Strikes and boycotts added pressure. Rivals gained readers. The empire still looked enormous from the outside, though cash was draining through its foundations. Hearst's personal spending made the problem harder. San Simeon required constant labor. Other properties had their own staffs and construction. His art purchases tied up money in objects that could not be sold quickly at full value. His film ventures lost money. Marion's career was intertwined with those ventures, which made her an easy target when the accounts turned red. The phrase, "the affair that cost him his empire," carries some truth when the affair is understood as a whole system. Hearst used business resources to support a private relationship. Money went into Marion's films and homes, while newspaper space promoted her career. Emotion entered studio negotiations. The two households continued because Hearst refused a clean settlement with Millicent. The affair exposed habits already present. Hearst had built his empire through excess long before Marion. He believed size created safety, influence, and profit. A new paper could support the chain, another medium could spread the same message, and another property could hold the next purchase. The logic worked while credit remained available. During the Depression, the same scale became a trap. By 1937, the trap closed. According to the account presented in PBS's Citizen Hearst, his companies owed $9 million to Canadian paper mills and $78 million to banks, along with overdue dividends. The paper suppliers threatened to stop shipping newsprint. A newspaper empire without paper had reached the edge of humiliation. Hearst, Marion, and several advisors took the train east. He sent Julia Morgan a message ordering all work at San Simeon to stop. That instruction may have hurt almost as much as the financial surrender. San Simeon had been the place where his commands still became visible. Cranes moved, walls rose, rooms changed. Stopping work forced him to acknowledge a limit. Marion's $1 million bought time. It did not restore his authority. In New York, creditors required Hearst to step aside. A bank executive took control through a trusteeship. The man who had dictated editorial positions across the country became an employee of the company bearing his name. Assets had to be sold. Losing newspapers disappeared from the chain. Wintoon, another beloved estate, was transferred to the corporation. Hearst had to pay expenses and rent connected with San Simeon. The household shrank. Employees were dismissed. Animals from the private zoo were sold or moved, including an elephant sent to the Los Angeles Zoo. The art collection, assembled across decades, was broken apart. The liquidation produced one of the strangest scenes in the Hearst story. Thousands of objects were displayed for sale on a floor of Gimbel's department store in New York. Egyptian pieces, Renaissance tapestries, furniture, silver, and curiosities that had once symbolized private power became tagged merchandise. Some items sold cheaply. The market for art remained weak, and a rushed sale punished the seller. Hearst had wanted history in his rooms. Now strangers could buy pieces of that history beside ordinary department store goods. Marion stayed with him. This loyalty complicates every simple judgment about their relationship. She had gained fame, money, property, and social position through Hearst. She also had enough money of her own to leave when his power collapsed. The glamorous period had ended. Creditors controlled the accounts. Staff members were gone. His age and health demanded more care. She remained. Her loan also changed the emotional balance between them. Hearst had once been the man who could provide anything. In 1937, Marion became the person who could provide what he lacked. Around this period, marriage finally appeared possible. Millicent had resisted divorce for years, in part because divorce would affect family standing and property. An agreement took shape late in the 1930s. Hearst and Marion traveled to Mexico, where they expected to marry once the settlement became official. Then Millicent added Cosmopolitan magazine to her demands. For Hearst, the magazine belonged to the empire and to his identity. He faced a choice between the business asset and the woman who had waited for him. He abandoned the divorce. Marion disappeared for several days. When she returned, she had been drinking heavily. People close to her later connected that failed marriage plan with a lasting decline. The legal wife had named a price. Hearst had decided Marion cost too much. This decision says more about the relationship than any castle room. Hearst could spend freely on what he owned. Marriage required him to surrender something he valued to a woman whose claim he had delayed for years. He chose the magazine. Marion still stayed. In 1941, Citizen Kane turned Hearst's life into cinema. Orson Welles played Charles Foster Kane, a publisher whose wealth, politics, collecting, and private palace drew obvious comparisons. Hearst recognized himself and tried to stop the film. His papers ignored it. Allies pressured theaters. The campaign gave the picture another kind of fame. Marion suffered damage she had not earned. Viewers connected her with Susan Alexander Kane, the second wife whom Kane pushes into an opera career she cannot sustain. Susan's failures become public because a rich man refuses to admit she lacks talent. The outline resembled the public caricature of Hearst and Davies closely enough to harden it. The resemblance failed where it mattered most. Marion had talent. Her silent comedies remain evidence. She had been a major box office star before the best of those comedies were released. She had written, produced, and worked through the arrival of sound. Hearst's support created opportunities and suspicion. It did not manufacture comic timing. Wells later tried to correct the record. In the foreword to Marion's memoir, he wrote that Susan Alexander bore no resemblance to her. He praised Davies as an accomplished comedienne and described the relationship with Hearst as a love story outside the subject of Citizen Kane. His correction arrived decades after the image had settled into popular memory. A film about Hearst's power became one more powerful institution, defining Marion for other people. World War II brought an unexpected recovery for the Hearst companies. Newsprint rationing reduced production costs. Public demand for war news increased circulation. Trustees had already sold losing properties and placed Hearst on a strict allowance. By the end of the war, the remaining business stood on stronger ground. The empire was smaller, yet it had survived. Hearst repaid Marion's $1 million. He also returned to spending as soon as conditions allowed. Renovations resumed on a guest cottage. The old impulse remained. Financial discipline had saved the business because other people had imposed it. Hearst and Marion continued their life together at San Simeon for several more years. The parties grew less crowded. They dressed for dinner, watched films in the private theater, cared for their dogs, and lived among rooms filled with memories. Age reduced the range of their world. In 1947, Hearst's health forced them to leave San Simeon for Marion's house in Beverly Hills, closer to medical care. As they drove away, Marion saw him crying. She told him they would return. They never did. She cared for him in Beverly Hills while he remained involved with his newspapers as long as he could. He read editions, sent corrections, and tried to command from a shrinking physical life. Marion had moved from chorus girl to star, hostess, lender, nurse, and guardian of an old man whose name had once filled front pages. Hearst worried about what would happen to her after his death. He gave her the Beverly Hills house and a large block of preferred stock carrying control of the corporation. The arrangement recognized how much of his life she had shared, though it also threatened the family structure waiting behind him. Hearst died in August 1951, while Marion was asleep under sedation in another room. His sons had the body removed before she woke. The funeral brought together political and Hollywood figures. Marion stayed away. She understood that the public ceremony belonged to Millicent and the family. For 32 years, Marion had been central to Hearst's private life. At his funeral, her absence preserved the official version of his. The stock he left her was worth a fortune and carried enormous power. Marion sold it back to Millicent Hearst for $1. She kept the property and money that were clearly hers, then released control of the company. The gesture answered the accusation that she had waited for Hearst's death to seize the empire. 11 weeks after he died, Marion married Horace Brown, a sea captain who resembled Hearst. The marriage was troubled, though it lasted until her death in 1961. Hearst's presence remained in her homes, stories, friendships, and public identity. The affair had cost both of them. Hearst lost family unity, moral credibility, money, and freedom of action. The promotion of Marion drew business resources into personal desire. Film spending and properties added weight to a company already burdened by debt. By refusing to divorce Millicent, Hearst trapped 3 people in an arrangement that lasted for decades. When he finally had a path to marriage, he chose Cosmopolitan over Marion. Marion lost ownership of her own reputation. Hearst's support made her career possible on a grand scale, then made the career look false. He protected her so aggressively that the protection became evidence against her. He offered luxury without legitimacy, attention without equality, and promises that stopped whenever they threatened his control. The empire's near collapse still belongs to Hearst. His debt, expansion, politics, collecting, and refusal to cut costs created the crisis. The decisions to buy failing newspapers, ignore financial advice, and run the company on borrowed money belonged to the man whose name it carried. She helped finance the life they shared. Then she helped finance its rescue. That reversal gives the title its sharpest meaning. The affair cost Hearst part of his empire because he treated love as another field for ownership, publicity, and spending. He used corporate power to shape Marion's career, and private power to keep her waiting. Those habits matched the ones that nearly destroyed his companies. Marion became the symbol of his excess because she was visible, young, famous, and easy to reduce to a role. The castle remained. The photographs remained. Citizen Kane supplied a character audiences could mistake for her. The bank ledgers, corporate structures, and political choices required more work to understand. Her $1 million loan sits at the center of the correction. Once Hearst's money could no longer protect Marion, her money protected him. She remained loyal after the empire stopped obeying him. Control of the corporation came to her after his death, and she returned it to his wife for $1. The woman remembered, as the mistress who drained his fortune, had become one of the reasons his name survived the crash. That fact does not turn their relationship into a simple romance. Hearst held power over Marion from the beginning. Their age difference was enormous. He controlled her contracts, publicity, and access to studios. She lived within an arrangement designed around his needs. Her loyalty can be admired without ignoring the structure that demanded it. The story also resists a simple verdict on Marion's choices. Marion accepted the houses, films, jewelry, travel, and status, and she used the opportunities they provided. Her own account, supported by people around them, also describes love for Hearst. Ambition and affection existed together. So did gratitude, dependence, resentment, and habit. Human lives rarely stay inside one motive. Marion Davies deserves to be remembered on the screen, especially in the comedies where her personality escaped Hearst's preferred image. Credit belongs to her for the money she earned, the productions she helped make, the guests she welcomed, and the care she gave during Hearst's final years. Her place in this history should be that of a person, rather than a decorative charge on a dead man's account. Hearst's empire survived in a reduced form and later grew into a major media company. San Simeon became a public monument. Citizen Kane became one of the most studied films ever made. Marion's reputation took longer to recover. The castle tells visitors how much Hearst could buy. Her story reveals what his money could never settle. Hearst could build towers above the Pacific, fill newspapers with praise, and order the largest possible movie sets. A wife remained in New York while a companion waited in California. He delayed the decision between them for decades. The final meaning of Marion Davies escaped his control. His promotion could not erase her career. Her loyalty outlasted the bankruptcy. The $1 million check outlived the rumor that she ruined him. Subscribe for more stories that separate famous scandals from the records left behind, and share this video with someone who still thinks Marion Davies was only the woman from Citizen Kane.